Welcome to Conscious Profits Unfiltered. This is your host, Sebastian Nam.
What up, fam? Today I brought on Carolene Meli. She had some really awesome and cool and unique stories to share with us. Carolene is an experienced strategist who helps bring more impact, intentionality, and success to the experiences that we offer, no matter what the business or industry. Her expertise stems from over 15 years in global events and entertainment, predominantly working for Cirque du Soleil, where she ran VIP experience teams across 17 different countries over a 10-year span. She also ran the entertainment department on a cruise ship and was part of numerous store openings for Lululemon. She has traveled to 41 countries and is currently based in the beautiful Mediterranean. No matter what country she is in, what teams she is leading, or what clients she is working with, her North Star is that one great experience has the potential to change someone's world. We talked about some really powerful experiences that she lived through during her journeys around the world and the importance of bringing the magic of experiences into life. This is a super cool episode, you guys. If you're digging it while listening, please take a screenshot and share it on your story, tag me, I'd love to reshare it. And please hit subscribe, it would mean the world to me. Thanks so much, guys. Much love to y'all and enjoy the show. What's up, Carolene? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
I love your excitement. You have great energy. Stoked to have you on. How do we pronounce your last name? I see the Kiwi, like sort of other way accent on the E there.
Yeah, Meli. It's French. My last name is French. My father is French. So yeah.
Got it.
It's like at the end of cafe, you know, there's an accent there if you write it properly. Not a lot of people do.
Fair enough. All right, got it. Well, my name should technically have an accent on the A, so it's Sebastian.
Oh.
It's not Sebastian, but you know, I've been here long enough, and I'm just like, I'm not even gonna try, you know. And like,
right.
Yeah. So, Carolene, I start all of my episodes asking my guests the same question, which is, when was your last oh shit moment? And that could be anything. It could be good, bad, whatever comes to mind.
Honestly, I think it was during the first lockdown, because I had finished working with Cirque du Soleil, and I was actually on a transfer where I had 4 days off. I basically took nothing with me because I planned to be in the sea the whole time. I was in the south of France, and then everything happened. Lockdown started, everything, Cirque du Soleil got canceled. And so I spent the next 4 months in the south of France in like dotting around Airbnbs, but I literally had about 5 items of clothing. I even had to buy I remember I had to buy a pair of track pants from the big supermarket there because I had nothing and there was nothing open. That was definitely a moment where I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? I didn't even have my laptop with me. That I had nothing. Really? So that's how I spent 4 months, the first 4 months of what became a very long lockdown. But yeah, that was definitely the first thing that France.
In the south.
Look, it was incredibly beautiful. I could see the sea. I got the most amazing Airbnb deals, obviously. But it was definitely a moment where the things that I would usually have around me, I just didn't have anymore. And of course, nobody knew what was happening just in terms of the global scale. So it was kind of just like, oh my gosh, what now? Because I also don't have a home. I'm very nomadic. I move around.
Yeah.
So that was another oh shit element on top of that. Like, where am I going to go?
Well, you know, that sounds like a better experience than being stuck in like a New York apartment without, like, you know, a view to anything. But so it sounds like a really interesting experience. So, and we can get right into that. So you worked 10 years with Cirque du Soleil, yeah?
Yes.
And you were in charge of VIP experiences, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So over the 10-year span, I worked all the front of house roles. So just to give a snapshot, on every tour, on every show, there is a team of around 10 of us that run all the front of house operations, the box office, the ushering, the hospitality, the boutique. And where I found my comfort zone, where I loved the most, was the VIP experiences. That's where I really thrived. And so I took advantage of that and really sat in that space for a number of years. So yeah, that was towards the end. But I did all the things really, which when you go on tour, anyone in the entertainment industry knows you kind of become good at many, many things because you don't have a choice, right? You're the only one there. You have to do it. So that was my experience.
That's really cool. And I'm going to come back to VIP experiences a little later, but I want to ask you first. So tell us a little bit more about how Cirque du Soleil like operates. Like in one show? Like how many humans are actually involved?
Yeah, so there's a team, a troupe, if you will, of 100-ish people that tour with every show. So when you get hired to Cirque du Soleil, you get, for the most part, get hired onto a show specifically. So you travel with the show from city to city. And I did a number of different shows. And then you have the breakup is around 40, let's say 40% artists, 60% everybody else, technicians, immigration specialists, accountant, front of house teams, all of those kind of teams. And
I didn't even think of like, oh, an immigration specialist. Yeah, you have people from all over the world in one show going all over the world.
Yeah, on any one tour, you could have there was one tour that we had 25 different nationalities within that group of 100. Wow. So, and some people come from relatively easy immigration countries. It's a Canadian company, so you have a bunch of Canadians. It's not hard to do immigration, but then you have people coming from the most random kind of countries in Europe and Northern Europe and Eastern European countries that are a lot more complicated. So there was an immigration specialist, there was a travel and lodging, because obviously we lived in hotels, accountant, there was all sorts of really interesting positions that, like you said, you wouldn't usually think about when you're sitting there watching a show.
So interesting. Like when you're watching a show, sometimes I would sit there and I mean, I kind of overthink a lot of things from a psychology standpoint, but I like, I will look at the people, they're working the show or the artists, and I'm just like, man, I wonder what their life is like what caused them to get to here. And because I feel like it takes a very special type of person or a different type of person to live that nomadic life, entertaining and traveling the world. And it's just such an interesting thing to me. Tell me like a weird story. I want like some weird shit. Like tell me something really weird that happened or strange, or, I mean, it could be like serendipitous or whatever. Just anything that comes to mind, or all those years working in Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, I mean, so many stories, right? Not only Cirque du Soleil, but I was traveling as well full time. So, every 2 months I was traveling as well. But I think one experience, and it definitely wasn't a positive experience, but we were playing in Paris when the Bataclan terror attacks happened in 2015, I believe it was. That was the most surreal, scary, like crazy experience that I have ever been in. And, we were shut down, the whole city, just to be in a city where the army was now infiltrated into Paris, like the whole city was shut down. Everyone was like losing their minds. And we were not allowed to obviously entertain for a number of weeks. And I'll never forget when we actually came back to performing the very first night, our creative director got everybody together, all 100 of us, sat us down, and she said, I'll never forget this, but she said, tonight we have the most important role out of any night that we have ever performed. She's like, it is our responsibility to take these 2,000 people out of the horrific world that exists right now out in Paris and in Europe in general, I think, but specifically, obviously, Paris, and take them away from that for 2 hours and bring back some laughter and some hope and some energy and some positivity. And I will never forget, I can still picture it very vividly in my mind. And it was when something becomes very mundane, like showing up to work every day and leading a team and seeing guests. And then all of a sudden, the purpose changes in an instant. Wow, like that changed me. That transformed really, I think, how I looked at my environment, right? And it was such a crazy time to be in. And luckily we weren't affected personally, like in terms of the people that we worked with. Nobody was in those areas, thank God. But wow, that was a crazy experience to be in the city, especially it was around Christmas. So there was Christmas markets, and it was just everything was touched by that horrific event. And to be part of an opportunity to, like I said, bring something special back to the people who just needed to escape for 2 hours and witness something beautiful and something spectacular. That's one of my stories that I remember very fondly.
Sure. That's super powerful. Yeah, I got goosebumps thinking about it. I talk about purpose a lot, and it's crazy how much that changed the experience for you guys. Yeah. So that's crazy. That's a really cool story. So I know you said you also were in countries, you had told me that you were in countries where, you didn't really speak the language. So you had like translation teams, and like, what was that like being in Russia, for example? Is that like one of the harder countries maybe for you to try to communicate? Because a lot of places you can maybe get away with English, but do you guys have like people translating for you and things like that too?
Yeah, so it is a prerequisite for our local staff to be able to speak some kind of English. And I'm pretty sure that the English test is like, do you speak English? And they say yes, and that's it. Because we got all ranges of ability. I don't think there was much deep dive into the actual language skills, which was fine. It was interesting. But Russia is the one place that I've been to where that prerequisite necessarily wasn't there. And I had to communicate through a translator. And it was the most interesting experience because when you aren't able to communicate with one of your senses, I guess, the other ones get heightened, right? So me standing there watching thousands of people come before me every day and in the main tents and on our site, I became very, very observant, right? Because I wasn't able to understand what they were saying. So I had to really pick up on a lot of cues and try to judge energy in a way. But also, I was in a culture that I'd never been in before. And, Russia has a very unique culture like other places. But when you're, for example, me touring around Europe, it gets quite similar, even though every country obviously has its own nuances and cultural differences. So that was a bit of a kind of slap in the face for me. And it was very interesting, even from a leadership point of view, like, how do I lead this team and how do I connect with them more importantly when we can't communicate? And, I'll never forget this moment where I like to kind of, my energy. I like to kind of lead with like a lot of smiling, a lot of gestures. And it was a bit weird to them. They were like, they were very kind of serious at the beginning. Of course, after a couple of months together, we warmed up. But I remember starting one of my like daily meetings with like a joke. I don't remember what it was now. But think about this. Like, you tell a joke, you laugh to yourself because you think it's funny. Then you have to wait, the blank stares. Then you have to wait for the translator to translate it. And then they react. It's like the craziest delay in reaction. And it was the most awkward thing, but I'll never forget that moment because it really, again, it's like a lesson in how we communicate, right? Especially when we don't have that immediate visual cue of the feedback from the other person, right? It's almost like, oh, I don't know what's going on. So yeah.
The best would be even if after that whole delay, they still don't react.
Yeah, still.
Like, oh, that wasn't funny.
Oh, yeah, that's one of those wanting to crawl under a rock kind of moments, I think. But they did laugh. So it actually broke the ice very well, but it was just very delayed in the process.
I love that. Really cool. Hey guys, I just want to remind you, if you want to find more content like this, you can visit sebastiannaum.com. That's Sebastian, NAUM.com. You can also get a ton of other marketing resources from myself and my agencies, ranging from SEO to social media, influencer marketing, branding, web development, and more. Again, that's sebastiannaum.com. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the show. Carolene, one thing, I'm still thinking about what you said earlier about the whole experience with Paris and how much like that talk that you guys got, that pep talk, whatever you want to call it, about having all of a sudden you felt this new purpose in having to entertain those people and how like that felt like it was the most important show. That's really tough to just gather without that type of motivation from that experience that you guys had lived. Do you think about that moment after that? Like, how do you try to bring that inspiration and purpose back into other shows or other things that you do in your life? It's tough to feel that inspired every day.
Yes. And what I remember most about my experience after that conversation is I was watching my staff, like we were all scared, right? It was a scary time. Something could have happened at our show. There were thousands of people there. Yeah. And there was a moment where I was looking around at my staff and I realized that I really had to show up for them. I was their leader. And even if I was very uneasy about the whole situation, I knew that they were even more so. These guys, it was just a casual job. They were just there, every few days. And so it really brought a huge level of responsibility to me as the leader of this team. And to lead on from that, I'll never forget whenever I was feeling a little bit complacent, whenever I was feeling a little bit even bored, just maybe even ungrateful, the one strategy that I used is I would go and stand. I would sneak into the big top and go and stand at the back. And I wouldn't watch the show because I've seen the show many, many, many times. I would watch the audience. And that was my biggest strategy in kind of rejuvenating me and rejuvenating my purpose, why I was there, why I was putting all this effort into leading these teams, because I saw the effect, the direct effect of what we were doing. And it wasn't me on the stage, but as part of that little worlds that they were in.
Yeah.
I saw it. I was watching them. I was watching the little kids laughing. I was watching people like gasping. I was watching them, turning and having a moment with whoever they were with. And that was really special. And once I discovered that strategy, I returned to that many, many times.
That's really cool. You reminded me of, I've been to a few Cirque du Soleils as a young kid, and then I went later on in my adulthood, and then the one that stood out the most for me was one called Joya in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen. And I had, I'm very grateful that I got to do the VIP experience. Actually, I went with my family, I went with my parents, and that was just like mind blowing. It was like, it was beyond any other Cirque du Soleil that I had ever been. Yes. And it wasn't necessarily because of the acrobatics, and it was about all the details.
Yes.
So many details that it was all about all of my senses. All of my senses were on fire. So I will never forget that experience. And so you talk a lot about experiences, right? And bringing the magic of experiences into life. And you talk about that in your show. So tell us a little bit about your show called The Experience Creators, correct?
Yeah, so that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably around 6 months ago or so, I was sitting here and I was thinking, man, we're really losing that element of magic in experiences. Everything that's going on in the world right now, there's so much negativity, there's so much polarity, we're fighting, we're not getting along. And I felt like even everyday experiences can actually be so incredibly powerful if we just put a little bit of effort into them, right? And I think we underestimate the impacts that we have on each other, and especially in a positive way, if we can just put a little bit more intentionality into the experience that we give someone, whether it's at the checkout at the supermarket or whether it's, you're hosting a dinner party, maybe it's a virtual dinner party right now, but I really wanted to tap into that magic and bring it back, and that's what the Experience Creators is all about. And it's a YouTube series. And I interview experience creators from all over the world. And I'm always very intrigued to really dive into what makes an incredible experience. And they all come from different cultures, different languages, different expertises. I just interviewed a Paralympic swimmer who's training for his 4th Olympic Games. I interviewed a magician. I interviewed an entrepreneur, like all of these different kinds of expertises. And what is very interesting is that there's so many commonalities in all of their answers in terms of what makes an incredible experience. And I didn't know that would happen, but as it started to unfold, I was like, damn, this is awesome. Like I found the thing that is connecting everything. And then I use what the strategies that they're bringing up and the insights that I'm getting into the work that I'm doing as an experienced strategist in helping create more impact in the experiences that we create. So it's something that I'm deeply in love with. I love interviewing people. You interview people. I think it's such a special experience, and you're able to connect and share a message in such a powerful way. And so, yeah, that's what the Experience Creators is all about. It's on YouTube.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Experienced strategist, and now you have, you hear the term experiential marketing a lot. And the reason that even became a thing over the last several years, I started seeing a lot when music festivals started really becoming mainstream, and it was all about experiential marketing as opposed to just having a booth with like your brand name on it or giving out samples. Right. It's all about creating a feeling and an experience, because that's what people remember. And then when they see that brand or that product, that feeling or experience comes back. And so that's what I think that's what the power about experiences and feelings, a connection is between whether it is entertainment or a brand or product and the consumer or customer.
Yeah, I think when we're creating experiences, whether it's officially, like like you said, if we have a marketing campaign, whether it might be a retreat, an event, maybe it's just the experience that we want our family to have around us. I think the first question that we should be asking ourselves is, how do you want them to feel once they're finished, once they've gone on this journey with you? And I think that question is very underrated. I don't think we ask it enough of ourselves and obviously of the people that we're working with. But if you're able to kind of figure out, all right, I want them to feel whatever it may be, excited or transformed, or feel like there's a change in them, or there's a rumbling, there's ambition has come back. No matter what the feeling that you're trying to create, if you are able to establish that early on, that can then dictate how you actually roll it out, which I think a lot of times we miss, right? And when I think of, if we go back to Cirque du Soleil, arguably some of the best experience creators in the world, when you know that when you go to a show, it's going to be an incredible experience, right? It's almost guaranteed. But somehow they are able to create that impact in a 5-year-old and in an 85-year-old, and in France and in Brazil and in Russia. How do they do that, you know?
That's
and
crazy.
Again, it comes down to, how do we want them to feel, and what journey are they coming on with us? So that's how I like to kind of start my conversations.
Sure. Yeah. And I think magic and awe and getting to the senses of people, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you're from, right? Or your age. So that's true. That's amazing to be able to do that to so many people.
Actually, one really interesting fact about in Cirque du Soleil shows, it is very rare. There's maybe 1 or 2 shows previously, but they never communicate in a language. It's always a made-up language because they want you as the audience to create your own interpretation. So if they did everything in English, for example, you're now watching a movie almost. You're following a story. Whereas even the clowns create their own languages, the show, the lyrics, all the live music, it's all in unrecognizable language for the most part, so that the onus is on you to create your own interpretation. And that's one of my favorite things about the creative process there. I think it's so powerful. To your point, it doesn't matter where you're from, you are going to be able to be impacted in some way.
Super cool. I didn't know that fact. That's really awesome. Yeah. So of course, you know, Cirque du Soleil being event entertainment, that's one of the most, you know, hit industries in the world with COVID, unfortunately. So what happened to Cirque du Soleil, and what has that done to you, your life, your career? How have you transitioned?
Yeah, so I think it goes without saying that they had to cancel all their shows. There's one show that's going on right now, but they had to let go of 95% of their employees. And for me, I was already at the end of my Cirque du Soleil career. It's a very hard lifestyle to leave if you're not kind of pushed out of it, I would say.
Interesting.
It's very enticing. You know, you're traveling, you're living in great hotels, you're having all these incredible experiences. But I'd been feeling for a while that I was no longer challenged. I didn't see any path in terms of growing within my realm at Cirque du Soleil. So I was already mentally kind of on my way out. And so the pandemic kind of did me a favor, to be honest, and didn't give me the option, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have the option.
I think it did that to a lot of people that were kind of, you're not sure, should I launch this? Should I change my life here and there? And it was like a little push.
Yeah. And of course it's incredibly scary, right? Especially if you haven't prepared for it. But as I mentioned, I spent the first 4 months of 2020, or the lockdown, in the south of France with a pen and paper and my phone, trying to think about, okay, how can I take all of my expertise? How can I take this unique experience that I have traveling all over the world, leading teams? You know, I also ran the entertainment department on a cruise ship at one point. So I have all these unique experiences. How can I then transform them and turn them into a service, turn them into something that I can offer, that I can share a very unique point of view? And it has taken a year. It's taken up until now to really figure that out. But I dove in. I didn't really have anything to lose, to be honest. So I gave lots of things a go. I worked with some great coaches that are still mentoring me today. And I just tried to figure it out. And I taught myself so many things as well, because I felt like I didn't have somebody there to rely on, say, okay, can you do this for me, or that, you know, maybe what you would do in a normal workplace. I had to teach myself how to do everything. And so, when I think about the last year, I almost refer to it almost as a slap in the face. You know, I didn't really have a choice, and it was just like, okay, it's all you now. You've got to show up, and you've got to try, and you've got to give it a go. And so it's taken a year, but now I feel the work that I'm doing, I'm just so in love with it. And I feel like it's important as well. That's really important, right? When you're creating something for yourself, to feel like there's a deeper purpose and that it is actually important work that can help other people. So, yeah.
And that work turned into a leadership program that you created. And you had described it to me as a leadership program that you wish you had. You were young in your career, early on in career. You're still very young. I mean, when you're early on in your career.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, when I realized that I really wanted to focus on the experiences, I looked at experiences in general and the creative side of experiences. Obviously, I've come from events and entertainment, so I love the creative element of experiences. But I also wanted to tap into the experiences that we provide as leaders in the workplace, if we have a team. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to tap into the younger leaders. And I thought, okay, let me create something for these guys that are starting off in the workforce, that maybe have their first, like, they've become a supervisor for a first time or a team leader. And when you're that age and when you're in that environment where it's your first few positions and jobs, the skills that you gain is really based on your environment, right? If you think about those first couple of jobs, I worked at Subway. That was my first ever job. And I think about, I learned by the people around me. So if you have an incredible team around you, amazing. But if you have a terrible manager or an inexperienced manager, or your team is you almost become a product of that environment when you're in that stage of your career, before you start to get very aware of, okay, I want to start developing in this area. I want to mentor. So yeah, that's really where I tapped into. And so it's called Better Your Leadership. It focuses on 3 main concepts of leading yourself, leading your team, and then leading your guests, and finding all the connections between those 3. And within each concept, there is a number of different lessons, looking at amazing things like growth mindset versus fixed mindset. You know, I even introduced Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we look at all these different elements, like learning what your triggers are, how you react. And I think to myself, man, if I had learned this stuff when I was 20 years old, wow, what a head start I would have had. And that's where I guess the passion from it really comes, from thinking of myself, creating what I would have wanted, or what I would have benefited from as a 20-year-old, let's say.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, learning your triggers and having a growth mindset, I think you really have to want to. If you don't want to, you're not going to, obviously, to take a program like that, you have to want to. You have to have that growth mindset almost. It's tough to like instill a growth mindset unless somebody can see what's on the other side of that. It's just so easy to be comfortable and not have that. So emotionally intelligent leaders, I know that's really a lot of what you're, coaching on. What makes a leader emotionally intelligent to you? Or well, actually, what is not an emotionally intelligent leader?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. And when I think about emotional intelligence when it comes to leadership, I think to the experiences that I had, and the leaders that I had, and the leaders that were pretty terrible, to be honest. And I think of the traits that they had, and the traits that they had, which I now can see are very toxic, with things like really leading through ego, being triggered by ego, creating a blame culture where you're not in, where you want to know who did that, who made that mistake. I've been in an environment like that, and it was horrible. It was so horrible. And also not listening to the people around you. By the way,
it's so easy for a leader to want to find blame for something, because I've studied emotional intelligence for quite a long time, and I try to be, a conscious leader every single day in everything that I do. And when something like major happens, when a big mistake happens, whether it's with a client or with a project for myself, it's like the immediate response is to try to find blame, because you don't want to be blamed for it. But then you have to snap out of it. But it's so easy to go that route.
It's so easy. Yeah, because that is the solution, right? Like, who did that and why? Yeah. But I was in an environment where that was the culture, and it was my higher ups, and I was leading a team. I was leading a big team, and there was no part of me that was going to go, oh yeah, it was this person in my team. Like, hell no. Like, it was such a, counterintuitive approach to me. I guess just I'd never used that strategy myself in the term of, well, they're going to get in trouble now, even though you do seek out those answers. So that was kind of what I saw. And now when I think of a great leader versus a not so great leader, they're the things that stand out. And even when I'm looking at my coaching and working with these young guys, you touched on that point about, well, they need to have that growth mindset. Well, even before that, especially at that age, what about just being curious? I think when people ask me what are the qualities of a great leader, curiosity is always in my top 3. And I think we so underplay that characteristic, right? And I learned that at Cirque du Soleil when I had a team in front of me, and I was the expert in operations, in leadership, in what we were doing on a daily basis. But do you know who the experts were in terms of the guests coming through our doors? It was my team, because they were from that place.
Yeah.
They were speaking their language. They knew them. And so I led those teams through curiosity. I asked them so many questions. We came up with ideas together. We strategized, we found different ways of approaching different things. But if I had kind of let my ego go, oh no, well, I'm the expert here, I'm the boss, man, I would have missed out on so many incredible improvements in terms of operations, but then in terms of how we spoke with our guests, the service that we provided with them. So I think curiosity is a really cool strategy direction to go down, especially when you're 20 years old and you have no idea what emotional intelligence is. You have never heard about growth mindset before. You've never heard about any of these things. Your frame of reference is going to this casual job that you have every day. And so I think if curiosity can be the focus, that's when all these other elements come in and you go, oh, I like that. Oh, I want to learn more about that. That's how I kind of see it.
Really cool. I was just interviewing a gentleman by the name of Luke Ficini, and he was talking about the term purpose curious. I hadn't actually never heard that.
I've not heard that either.
Yeah, purpose curious. It's being curious, like you just said. But the way you just talked about curiosity is so important. I feel like it's probably going to lead one of your answers into the next question that I'm going to ask you, which is, you're clearly a conscious leader yourself. You've got this a lot of amazing experience in creating connection and building experiences, and part of your purpose is to now instill that, emotional intelligence into young leaders, to give them the skills that you wish you would have had from a young age, to teach them how to, find their triggers, how to have a growth mindset and all that good stuff. So what are 2 traits that you think that the conscious leader must embody today? And you can feel free to bring up curiosity again.
Yeah, curiosity is definitely number 1. Cool. I think by nature, we're very curious as humans, right? That's why we travel. That's why we go to a new restaurant we've never even heard of before. That's why we try something new. It's just inbuilt into us to be quite curious. And I think if we can take that element that we have had, think of kids, they're so curious. They ask you why. They want to know. They want to know so many things. And so if we're able to really tap into that behavior when we're talking about in the workplace or in any kind of leadership, I think it's such an amazing start, because not only do you as the recipient of asking these curious questions get more answers, get more insights, get more skills, but I believe, and this is from my own experience, that it very easily helps you to connect with your team or conversely helps you connect with your leader, because you're asking questions. And in saying that, I think you can ask, it's very important to be listening to the answers as well. There's that quote, actually, I heard this very recently, and I was just like, I stopped what I was doing and just had to think about it for a minute. But, when they say quality questions equal quality life, and I just loved that. It's the first time I ever heard it, just a couple of weeks ago, but I thought, wow, that's so interesting to think about. What are the questions we're actually asking? And then how are we listening? Because you could ask 100 questions. If you're not actually listening to the answers, not only are you not receiving the feedback you need, but now there's a disconnect between you and your team, let's say, because they know that you don't care about the answer. You just want to ask the question. Whereas if they can feel that it's very reciprocal, and it turns into conversation, and it turns into really thought-provoking strategies, then it's a really interesting environment to be in, curiosity. So that would be.
Do you feel that curiosity is tied to the ability to be wrong and make mistakes? Or do you think that that's separate?
No, I would say for sure, because if you are not curious, then it's almost like you don't want to ask questions because you may be wrong, right? And then, oh my gosh, I'm going to seem stupid. Sure. I'm going to seem, like that I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm supposed to be leading these guys.
Yeah.
And so I think it is definitely tied into it, but also realizing, okay, I'm wrong. Now, what are the questions I need to ask to make this either right or to improve it or to mend that relationship that I have with my team? So I think it definitely ties in all together.
Yeah.
Whether we realize it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. What about the second trait? Curiosity. It's number 2.
Yeah. Number 2, I guess it's a bit of a follow-on, and I talk about this a lot in terms of creating incredible experience, but I think the ability to connect. And some people are very good at this, and some people are not so good at it, and some people are comfortable with it, some people are not. But when I think about connection from a leadership point of view, my mind automatically goes to all the situations that I've been in where I had to lead a team, like in Russia, and I could not connect with them with the medium that I would usually use, which is English language, for example. So now I had to find a different way to connect with them that was completely different. I had to get creative. And even now, for example, I'm in Montenegro. I don't speak Montenegrin. I can say like 3 words. I don't speak it at all. But we have to wear masks everywhere. So not only am I not able to use the language, but I can't even use the bottom half of my face and smile. Sometimes I think, I hope they can see that I'm smiling through the mask. But it's such a weird concept. Like until that actually happened, I never would have consciously thought about that, right? But when you remove the bottom half of your face and you're only going with your eyes and you can't speak the language, how am I connecting? How do I do that? And so I think if, anyone listening, if you can think of a situation where there's been some kind of barrier in you connecting with the other person, whether it's a language, language is the most logical one, right?
Yeah.
It could be something else. It could be one of the senses has been removed from that person, or they don't have that sense. So how are you connecting? And I think if you are a great leader, you have a knack for that. You have a natural talent for connecting on a different way and I think also because you're curious, right? That's the first one. You are naturally inquisitive about, how can I do this a little bit differently, instead of communicating in a lazy way because you know that you can just do it, So that would be my number 2.
I love that. Curiosity and connection.
Connection, yeah.
Cool. Love it. So how can people get a hold of you? Where do they find your show? How do they take your leadership program?
Yeah, so the Experience Creators, you can just search that on YouTube. It's there, ready for you to absorb all of these incredible interviews. The leadership program, betteryourleadership.com, very simple. And then my website, where you can be connected to all these things, is just my full name, carolenemeli.com, where you can see the spelling in the podcast. So yeah.
Great. And I'll include the links below, of course. Well, guys, if you've enjoyed the show and you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe, take a screenshot, share it on your story. I will reshare that real hard. But thank you for being on, Carolene. That was a really fun time. I love it. I really love it. I feel your energy. I feel the energy, your connection, and your purpose. So keep doing you. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. I've loved it.
Thank you so much. Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. It takes a lot to put these things together, but I truly love doing it. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, and you listen to it on audio podcast, please take some time to give it a review. It would really mean a lot to me. And if you watch the video, please go ahead and just click subscribe and share it with somebody that you think would like it. It would really mean the world to me, and it helps keep the show alive. Visit sebastiannaum.com for more content, and follow me on Instagram at sebnaum. That's SEBNAUM. Thanks again for spending your time with me. I know it is valuable. I hope you have a great rest of the day and week. Till next time.